Alrighty, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Devoid, and this is my dad, Rev Atheist. As you know, this is Redacted, a live podcast where we talk about Star Citizen and its ongoing development. What are we talking about today, Rev?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about engineering, right? So we had the Inside Star Citizen today that talked all about engineering coming in 4.0. Also, the tech preview that's currently ongoing, which encompasses the server meshing, which is awesome. I hope we talk a little bit about the ATLS that they released on the last little patch, because I have some things to say. But other than that, we're gonna talk about this new technology coming into the verse. Maybe take a few questions if there are a few.
Yeah. So I think Rev, you just watched the Inside Star Citizen as we were sort of prepping for the podcast, right? I watched it this morning as I was
Yeah,
having my
yeah,
morning
excellent
cup of
use of my
coffee.
time doing it immediately before the show, rather than making sure that things are going to go smoothly. We'll see how well that plays out.
It was a good show. It's the last Inside Star Citizen of the season, so hopefully we can have a good discussion today because I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. But engineering 4.0, we're going to see the implementation of engineering.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it looks pretty good. We got a little taste of it. I want to say a couple patches ago in like 323 PTU
Yeah,
with Arena Commander. It might even still be in Arena Commander. Admittedly, I haven't tried it since it was in PTU with the A2 and the Gladius.
sure. So one of the things that I did see, which to me was new, either because they hadn't shown it before or because I wasn't paying attention, is the actual screen where you can assign power, like from your
That's new.
right, which I think is actually kind of a neat way to do it, because it actually shows, hey, these are how many units of power you've got. Here's how many units of power these different components can utilize, and you can just assign it, and it just takes it down. And I think that's really neat. It's very visual,
Yeah.
and it's really intuitive. It's really easy to understand what's going on. I think that's important
It's a
coming
way
into it.
it's a way to manage power that's been done in other games. Did you ever play Starfield?
No,
That's okay. You're not missing out. It's
good. I
not a
don't think
great
I am. I'm
game.
not really interested.
However, the power management very similar. You've basically got your jump drive, you've got your weapons, you've got your shields. Same idea, right? As what we have in Star Citizen. It's a little bit more complex in Star Citizen as we've seen, but it's the same idea. You have X amount of power that your power generator can put out, and you can assign, boop, 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 dial it up or down on individual systems until those units of power are depleted.
Sure.
I've
Well,
seen
I
it
mean,
on a couple of games.
yeah, conceptually, I mean, I knew it was coming, but to see the implementation of it, to me, I think is the thing. Like, what's that user interface going
Yeah,
to be
no, it's
like?
fantastic.
What's that experience? And I think it's going to be real easy or fairly simple for an engineer to be able to move stuff around and to be able to understand, how that's going. I am curious to see how it'll work if, like, well, I don't want to, like when we're trying to move power from one place to another, right? Like, do you have to, like, back off one and then increase the other? Is there a way that you can directly transfer power? I'll be interested to see what they work out there, because sometimes in crunch situations, that speed, not having to take that intermediate step, that could be the difference between a win and a loss, survival and death.
I get that. From what I've seen, it looks like it's just like you said, you have this pool of power, right? And as you apply power elsewhere, it drains this pool. And I feel like if you have that pool completely utilized, right, you have all X number of units powered up, and you need to go from one component to another. I feel like you would have to dial the power down on that component before you can power up another component. Otherwise, you just wouldn't have. But hey, also batteries, right? Because we know that batteries are coming in. Batteries are sort of this extra stored power where if you exceed the power consumption that your generators put out, you have this window where the batteries will make up for it and those will deplete. And then if you go into a deficit again, it recharges the batteries. Do you remember that from the PTU
Yeah,
playtest
no,
with engineering?
I am absolutely aware of the way that the batteries are supposed to work. And then also, I don't know, I'm wondering how much they're really considering. Like, are they considering a way that you can overdraw on the power supply, causing it to increase in heat output and potentially damaging it? Like, is that a thing?
Well, they actually talked about that, right? They talked about that in the video
Oh,
where they
I
have
was
the
a little distracted. I
components.
guess I missed that piece.
That's okay. That's okay. They were talking about the components, and those components not only have a power display where you can control the amount of power that they consume and how much they output, but next to it is also a temperature display. And as they get warmer, they go into this red zone, and when they start to overheat, they can cease working or take damage, right?
Well,
And so you'll have to reduce the power going through them, and then probably bump up your coolers to make sure that they're covering. Like there's bars and graphs to determine how much heat is being produced versus how much your coolers are working.
right. Yeah, no, I picked up on all of that. Don't get me wrong. I was specifically talking about the potential of overdraw on
I
the
think
power supply.
I
So
think the
like,
overdraw is going to tie in with the batteries that we were talking about.
yeah, yeah, that's probably enough. I'm just, I don't know.
I imagine that
Until it actually happens, I will perpetually live in this world of fantasy where something they haven't said might actually exist.
that's fine. I get
So,
that. Hung is asking, wait, do you have to do maintenance on your ship?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty bare bones right this moment, but they just put out a video describing the system that's going to come out of the next patch. And no, it's not like scheduled maintenance, but basically your components, things like your shield generator, your power supply unit, your coolers, your warp drive, stuff like that, those all degrade with use. So the more you use them, the more they degrade, and you have to maintain them over time. You have to make sure they stay repaired. You have to make
Right.
sure that you maintain a constant temperature level.
Yeah.
Um,
So to be clear, Stumpy, what these components are physicalized, meaning they exist at a specific location in your ship. You can pull the at least up to size like size 1 and size 2. You can pull them out and replace them. Um, and so consumable, not exactly, right? So like, your shield generator is not a consumable part, although it may degrade to a point where you do have to replace it.
Correct. And yes, they're not consumable, but they are serviceable, is the idea. And
Yes, you have to
do you
physically
have to
walk up to it and replace it 100%.
Yes, there is like you basically pop the hood, which is this panel, you open up the panel, and for fairly small components, you have the power to physically remove them yourself. Anything basically medium size and larger, you have to go and have it done, so you can't do it yourself. But yes, they are these physical components that you can access, and you can remove them from your ship and reinstall. There's also added things like fuses and relays, which help to
Hmm.
dictate power flow, right? And these fuses can burn out. If you need to manually override power flow, you can take fuses out and put them in. Um, but yeah, everything is physicalized, and the idea is that it's hands on for everything. You
Yeah.
have the ability to walk up and repair things. The idea is if something breaks, you can go fix it.
Yep.
Right? You don't have to pull into a bay and click the repair button. You can do it all hands on,
Yeah,
which is
and
cool.
obviously the whole idea of the fuses is that literally a fuse is it's the junction between the power and certain parts of the ship. So loss of a fuse, you could lose in like power to an entire section of the ship. You could lose power to a component, and you have to go fix that in order to power the component back up. So,
And you said, is there an option of an easy button? Yes. As long as your ship is still flyable, you can go to any sort of repair facility, such as a space station or an on-planet
oh,
facility, and you can pay money, and you can have a fix-all button where it is done automatically. Though I
but
imagine
not
because of
on the fly. Not on the
no,
fly.
not on the fly. Not you. You have to physically limp your ship to a repair facility, and then you can click a button and have it done automatically.
Possibly tow it.
Possibly tow it if your engines fail and you can't fly, if your fuel tanks or something fail, you have no fuel, right? Then yes, you can be towed. um
It's very real
i
world.
imagine I imagine that they're going to add things like time delays. There's not a time delay right now, meaning you click the button, it takes your money, it fixes your ship instantly. But we've also seen with the newest cargo update that now that everything is manual, you have to physically load cargo, There is an option for automated loading, but now it's a paywall and a timer. So you have to pay money to have it done, and you have to wait. And so
Yeah,
I imagine
because
repair will work similarly.
I mean, it takes time for people to load that stuff up, right? So if you're not going to load it yourself, they're at the very least going to simulate the time that it would take.
Right,
So
exactly. Say,
similar
oh,
type of a mechanic.
and the idea, right, is in the distant future is that there may actually be physicalized NPCs coming on your ship, inspecting these components and fixing them on hand. That's the idea. They have holy cow, Stygian Sky. It's been a long time, dude. Welcome back. It's been a long time. I'm glad to see you coming back. Um, yeah, it's cool. Stumpy, just to kind of put things into perspective, right? This game has been in development for over 10 years now, and it's been fairly slow up until recently. And the reason being is because alongside Star Citizen, which is the open world space game that we play every day, they have been developing a single player adventure game called Squadron 42, and that's where the most of their resources in terms of manpower, like developmental manpower, has been. That game is now feature complete. It's been polishing for the last year, and so all of that manpower, or nearly all of it, has been being poured into Star Citizen, and so we're seeing a lot of accelerated development, and so we're seeing a lot of cool things coming recently. So, what's up, Tex? Glad to
Yeah,
have you in
good to
chat.
have you.
So, yeah, engineering is looking really cool. They talked about life support. Rev, did you pick up on that?
I did. They talked about life support. So life support would be a new component that doesn't currently exist in ships. So that'll be another thing physicalized on the ship that will require power that you'll have to manage. The interesting piece of the life support, obviously, is this idea that the life support has to be operating in order for you to breathe without a helmet, right? So that opens up the gameplay where you can vent atmosphere. Damage to the ship could potentially result in
In
unlivable
decompression?
spaces if you have to go repair the space and return life support to that section of the ship. So that's another really interesting piece that I'm looking forward to, especially on the large ships
Yeah.
where the engineering play is really going to be prevalent.
Yeah, so life support is really cool because it gives one more thing. It's divided by rooms, so you can seal off a specific room if it starts leaking into space, which is cool. So you don't have to, if one room is exposed to space, you don't risk the entire ship. Two, just like you said, it's cool because if you're a pirate or something, or you're doing some subtle espionage, you're trying to sabotage something, you can vent the ship, which is pretty cool. But even cooler is that with engineering coming in, they're introducing fire. Your components can catch fire if they take too much damage. Fire requires oxygen to feed, which means that if you have a room that is on fire and you open up that room to space, it will suck the oxygen out and snuff the fire. So it can be a tool or it can be a disaster, and you can kind of play around with it as you see fit. Say, "Oh, I need
Yeah.
to vent the oxygen." It's
Yeah, so
gone,
so
which is really
important to
cool.
note that at this point in the game, it is possible actually to open your ship up to space. It just behaves as though there's some kind of force field keeping the atmosphere in. So like you can open your cargo bay, you can open your docking ports, and you're fine unless you jump out or something stupid. Um, and so just having that ability to actually, I open my cargo bay, oh shit, now if they actually interesting thought though is that idea of like decompression, explosive decompression, right? The air suddenly rushing
Yeah,
out and the force involved in that'll be interesting if they actually managed, or if they even attempt to deal with that, so that like if you happen to open your cargo bay while somebody's in there, shoo, you no longer have an intruder.
right.
I hope they
I
do, but I
think
understand if they
I
don't.
think they talked about that very briefly some time ago, and this is deep in the recesses of my memory. I don't think they're going to be doing that. Um, but
Oh well, Cyber's saying that he's seen
Cyber is
demonstrations
saying
of
maybe
that.
otherwise, but yeah, I don't think they're going to implement it, right?
Well, maybe not initially. The other thing that is though, if they do that, right, and they don't make cargo subject to that same force, dude, why are you
He was asking about my he was
oxymoron?
asking about my shirt.
You know what an oxymoron is, right?
I do,
Yeah,
but that's okay. I just wanted to show hung my shirt.
yeah. Anyway,
Um,
so yeah,
yeah.
if cargo isn't subject to the same forces that a player would be, I think they're missing out, right? So if you're going to vent cargo to eject somebody, I think maybe your boxes might be
Well,
subject to being blown out too.
we are really talking hypotheticals now,
Well, we are
right?
partially
But
because
I was just about to say, Cyber just said it. Cargo's magnetized to the deck. On the
oh,
flip
there
side,
we go.
I see no reason why, if you're in a space kind of simulation, 1,000 years in the future, why wouldn't your boots be magnetized the same way, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, no,
But I mean, that's like I
it's
said, that's all hypothetical.
well, it
We
makes
don't.
sense now that you say it based on the way cargo even currently works because there's a grid and it's all and it locks into specific
Right,
places. Clearly, there's some kind of magnetic locking happening on the cargo
right,
already. So
right.
that's fair.
So, there was one more. There's another thing that I didn't see in the video that I am curious to see how it works, and something that I hope that they implement some sort of field repair to is they talked about things like, the idea that you should always be able to fix your ship one way or another. As long as it doesn't fully explode, you hit something like a quantum drive or something or a power supply and it explodes your ship, right? That's obviously a lost cause. That's when you would put your insurance claim into effect. However, the idea behind something like losing an engine, right? If you lose an engine, I'm just thinking of my Cutlass Black, for example, notorious for losing engines. What I would love to see in the future is if I can find another Cutlass Black somewhere, cut the engine off or detach it as like you can detach other things, use something like the ATLS that we're going to talk about soon and just reattach it, maybe use like a repair tool to essentially weld it back on. That would be really cool. That would be a great way to do some field repair that doesn't just involve things like hull or components. And that's just something that I had in the back of my mind, right? Is if something like large like that fails, maybe it's depending on the ship size or the ship design. Because something like, for instance, like a Crusader, like a Mercury Star Runner, or something like that, where the engines are built in. I mean, you're not actually blowing those off, but maybe some ships you can repair engines or replace them. Maybe others you can't. Just an idea. What do you think about that?
Uh, I was distracted. I mean, yeah, no, it sounds cool. But,
Of course you were. It's okay.
well, I'll tell you what I was distracted by this number 15 on our viewer account. Which I'm not sure that we've hit 15 before. I just want to say thanks everybody for showing up and listening.
Yeah, we're seeing a couple of names that we haven't seen in a little while. Stygian calling you out again. Um, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for engineering, right? It's very very exciting. Life support is huge. Repair is huge. It opens the door to things like the Vulcan, the repair ship,
Oh
and
yeah.
what was the other one? There was one more repair ship, but maybe we're going to start seeing development on those soon. I think it was Stygian who asked, when is the Perseus coming in?
Yep.
Because we're talking about things like engineering and how that's going to affect things like crew.
Did you say
Um,
the Crucible?
Crucible, that's the other repair ship, Vulcan and the Crucible. But just side tangent here, the Perseus is probably coming out in the next year or so because they're doing an RSI sprint and the Polaris is just about done. Then it's the Galaxy, then the Perseus. But anyway, we anything else to say on engineering? That was a lot to cover right there. A lot of good stuff that really changes fundamentally how the game works.
Yeah, I
Pretty much
mean,
nailed
not
it though.
really. Until we really get it in our hands. I mean, it is all speculation and just kind of talking about the videos that they've shown us. Super cool ideas, super cool demonstrations that they've provided. Definitely looking forward to getting my hands on it and actually getting a crew together, going out
I
in something that requires that crew to be effective and seeing what we can do with it.
I suppose there is one question that I still have because they talked about it a little bit in the video and we didn't touch on it yet. Is your life support systems on any ship are designed to operate with a certain amount of crew? It can produce enough oxygen or filter enough oxygen to support X number of crew. For instance, a Corsair might be able to support 4 normally. You could probably stress it to support 6 if you overclock. But if you throw 20 guys on that ship, you're going to breathe oxygen faster than you can filter it.
Did they talk about that?
They did. They did. They talked about if you have to suck power away from your life support systems, that you're going to suffer on breathing. And it was one of those bars when I was talking about temperature. It was one of those bars of use versus production,
Hmm.
and oxygen was on there.
And the number of
And
people on the ship will affect that.
well, yeah, they talked about that in one of the CitizenCon demos where they were talking about life support, and if you have too many people in a room, it's going to start sucking the oxygen down. And so I guess my question here, right, is are you going to be able to upgrade those life support units? Because so far we can upgrade everything else.
Yeah, theoretically. Hopefully,
That'd be
eventually
kind
they'll
of cool,
actually start
right?
making those components actually a little more different. But yeah, I mean,
It would be cool if you can
you kind of
upgrade
would
your life support generator.
you kind of would think that you would have to be able to, right? Because a like an exploration ship is certainly going to need better life support, maybe
Definitely.
than
At
like
least more sturdy life support, right? Because if you're out in butt fuck middle of nowhere in the void and somebody drops a wrench, hits the life support generator and completely just mangles it, right? You're in for a problem. So it's got to be sturdy. Probably has to be able to pump out some juice, right?
right.
So I mean, yeah, it makes sense to me that you should be able to upgrade your life support
Yeah.
generator.
So some of the things that they're saying in the chat leads me to also question resource management within the suit that you're in, right? Because we know that
Yeah,
that's also going to be a thing. Resource management with your guns and your multi tools and such. So uh, I know they've talked about uh, oxygen being limited when you're like in EVA, and then
definitely.
so that power and that oxygen uh, being a factor that'll it'll certainly add an extra layer of concern when you're doing something like taking out a comm array or repairing a comm array or you know activities of those natures.
So they already have oxygen in suits, and you can deplete your oxygen in your suit. And this is evidenced by just hang out in space for an hour,
Oh, that's
right?
true.
You'll
Yeah,
run out of oxygen.
that's right.
Go to jail and go mining for an hour, you'll run out of oxygen. It already exists, right? But this does bring up a good point. If your life support system does fail, what are your options? You're going to be limited to what's in your suit. And maybe finally we will see a use for oxy pens, which for those of you who don't know are little, they're basically blue med pens that have a shot of oxygen in it and you can go and I don't know if the idea is where it pumps oxygen into your suit or if it like is a direct oxygenation into your bloodstream. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's 1,000
I
years into
think
the
it's
future,
probably supposed to be oxygenation to your bloodstream, but
but
it works like adding it to your suit.
it does. It does. My point is maybe you have to keep emergency oxygen stores on your ship disconnected from your life support system now in the form of oxy pens, or maybe you keep a spare suit that's got a full tank. Right? We have suit lockers coming soon, so
Yeah, I'm not
it's
holding my
it's
breath for
cool
that. I know
because
they keep. I don't know about. We'll see if we get those.
you have to put some ground copium horn dust on your tender vittles so you don't get armor rash. My point to this whole tangent that we've kind of gone on with oxypens is that it opens up a lot of gameplay in the sense that in the way that I enjoy Star Citizen gameplay, and that you have to think about what's happening and think about what is going on and what's going to happen and prepare for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Preparing is the name of the game with
Yeah,
Star Citizen. And if you catch yourself unprepared, you're going to suffer.
yeah. No, I'm
But if you're
definitely
like the
looking
mom
forward.
with everything in your purse, you're probably going to be okay.
Definitely looking forward to the idea of having to prepare for every expedition, and then even just being able to have like ships just ready to go at a moment's notice because you've got them pre-stocked, and maintaining those stores and like, oh, my my I don't know, my freelancer is low on like a couple of things that I know I'm going to need, so I got to go to the store and just stock up my freelancer so it's ready for the
Yeah,
next time I go out.
I'm really excited for that tedious level of I mean, frankly, bullshit. It's bullshit that you're going to have to do that, but I'm so excited for it. You know?
Right. Yeah. So earlier, somebody talked about needing to revamp ship storage so that you can have these extra components available and have a place for them. And I think that
I
that's
agree completely.
important. But I also think that for the most part, the ships that are going to be subject to this level of engineering play are going to be large enough. They're going to have cargo bays. They're probably in most cases already got some space where you can put those kinds of things. It would be nice if they like on their gold passes and stuff after they implement this, if they consider, okay, well, we need to have a room for these extra part storage.
So, if I may, right, I daily fly the Corsair. It's my go-to ship. It's my portable home. It's where I live. And I understand what he's saying because if we're going to be subjected to a virtual world where we have to consider every angle like this, we have to consider oxygen stores, we have to consider food stores, we have to consider, extra clothing, and we have to consider all of these items, then it would be beneficial to us as players to provide us with storage solutions that do not directly detract from things like the cargo grid of the ship. I should not have to have a 2 or 4 SU crate in my cargo bay to hold these items. I should be able to walk in the kitchenette of my Corsair and open a cabinet and access my food.
Yeah, or
I should
have them
be able
stacked
to.
up in the cargo bay like various components. It's like, come on.
Right. No, exactly. And I believe, I'm not going to say we know because they haven't actually talked about it, but I believe that they're going to implement these things because I'm using the Corsair as an example because I'm familiar with it. In the bridge of the Corsair, there is a panel on the wall that says like basically EMP safe storage or radio safe storage, and it's like a quarter SU or point 0.2 SU, and it looked like it's an idea where you open it up and it's got some storage in there, and it's supposed to be like scan safe storage, but it's you can't interact with it, right?
Right.
And so I'm sure that there will be eventually these various storage locations on ships, especially ships like the Corsair, the Mercury Star Runner, probably like the Freelancer, the Cutlass Black, anything that has any sort of living amenities will probably have at least one of these extra storage places just for random crap like that.
Yeah, no, I certainly hope that happened. Yeah, I mean, it's got to happen. It's got to happen.
LT says, "What do you all think about organization hangars need to come into play where you can get like 7 size hangars as an option to individual hangars?" I actually am going to disagree with this notion. And the reason being is because individual hangars fine. If you need to have some place to put together your ship and call up ground vehicles and spend extra time loading and unloading. I get it, right? I feel personally like these individual hangars are a temporary solution to an issue that needs to be addressed in the future. It doesn't have to happen now, but base building, right? I'm not going to get too deep because I have a lot to say,
Yeah,
but
you do.
why would we why would we spend so much resources coming up with organization hangars when those same resources can get poured into base building to accomplish the same thing in a much better way? That's all I'm going to say on that. Organization hangars, I don't think need to happen. So, um, but yeah, that's that. So moving on from engineering, right?
Hmm.
We talked a little tiny bit about the ATLS. I think we barely briefed. We touched on it last time because it was in PTU, but it's now officially out. People can get the ATLS. Um, we're not going to have the cash grab discussion here because I think it's a silly one. But it's like 35 or 40 bucks on the pledge store if you want to go get it, or you can wait probably 3 to 6 months and buy it in game. It's probably going to be pretty cheap in game because it's a fucking battery powered mech with a tractor beam. It's not anything crazy, but it
Right.
is cool. It is cool. It is the first working mech suit that we have, which, if anything, is proof of concept for more to come.
Yeah, so cool. I'm glad we're talking about it because I have thoughts on this thing and I want to talk about it. So
Okay, let's do
you say working and I say technically.
it. Okay.
So I did get an opportunity to get in there and play with it a bit, right? So I tried using it on uh, a Caterpillar. Don't bother. It's I mean, well, I was doing like 8 SCU boxes, and it was huge pain in the butt. It was very difficult going from you can't take it from section to section, So it's really impracticable for the Caterpillar, in my opinion. I tried it on the C2. Much better. You can just walk right up there. It's great. However, um, I was having difficulty. It was a little bit of a learning curve figuring out how to place the boxes where you want them to, because you don't have the same kind of push out, pull in control that you have with like the tractor beam gun, which is fine. And so I was having a hard time finding and controlling where exactly was going to be dropped. Since since then I've heard, oh, well, you can use F4 and turn your camera and you can see the spots better. But that's a big pain in the butt having to go third person just so that you can deal with dropping your cargo in the right place. So I mean, there's work to be done. I'm interested to see what they can do with it. It does function. It's interesting. So like one thing that's nice is it it works very differently than the multi tool or the tractor beams in general, in that when you lock on it and you hit it with the beam, it'll pull it off the grid and it just rockets to you and stops so fast, and then it's right there and it's right in your face. You're like, okay, great. Well, it's close. I want to go put it down somewhere. Um, and once you decide where it goes, it'll push it and drop it into that spot. I mean, the speed is nice. I love the speed. Being in the suit is cool, but it is fiddly. It is fiddly, for sure.
I feel like we're gonna start seeing real benefit to this with as we get more of these larger capacity ships. For ships like the Freelance or the Cutlass, makes zero sense to own. We start to see where it makes sense with these several hundred SU ships.
Sure.
If the Caterpillar had the doors that would drop down, might be a different story.
Yeah.
But we'd have to
You
play
know,
around and see.
if you had a team of like one person in the ATLS and like another person with like the tractor gun or the multi-tool with a tractor attachment, so that you could like pull it in real quick, drop it, and then they put it in a spot, that could be a pretty effective and speedy way to deal with your cargo. Vice versa, if you run the ATLS out and off the ship, having somebody pop it off and putting it at the door so you can grab it and just shoot it real quick over to where it goes. Another super handy way to deal with the ATLS,
Definitely.
even in its current iteration. Um, but I'd like to see some adjustments made so that that's not as necessary, and so that you don't have to F4 out of your first person view.
Definitely. I agree. I agree. As somebody who takes pride in landing his ship in first person view, I'm a huge advocate for making sure everything is doable and reasonably doable in first person view. Um, I'm excited to see how things, these larger capacity ships such as the C2, the Ironclad, as it comes out. Right, we're going to see the Polaris here pretty soon. These larger ships that have a big cargo grid. I see a real use case for them and chips like that. I will probably buy one in in-game currency later and keep it in my Ironclad,
Oh,
just
the
because,
ATLS.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I have a credit. I went ahead and just
It's a LTI token right now, if anything, right? I don't think it's worth keeping in the long term, but if you're looking for a cheap way to start upgrading to some LTI, it's good to pick one up, right? Um, but yeah, when it's available in game, I'll probably pick one up and just keep it on my Ironclad. I like it, but we need to be able to call up more than one. Just saying, base and hangar for organizations, we should hypothetically. Not quite sure what you mean, but feel free to elaborate. Um, they Zim said something about being able to toggle between the style of tractor beam that's on the ATLS versus the max lift style of tractor beam where it's static. You have to do everything.
mhm.
I sort of agree. I've heard it both ways. People are saying, "Oh, I wish normal tractor beams worked this way," or "Oh, I wish the ATLS worked like the max lift." I think having that toggleable style would definitely be beneficial. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see the smaller portable handheld tractor beams working this way, only because the the ATLS is, I mean, it's large, it's industrial, right? Whereas even the larger tractor gun that you can get, I mean, it's a handheld thing. Yeah, it's big, but there should still be there should be some consideration for inertia, right? If it's coming at you that fast, that means there's a pull happening on you also. So if like a handheld tractor beam or something were to work that fast, I feel like it should also pull you towards
It
an
doesn't.
ATSCU box.
It absolutely should not work that fast. I'm talking about the mechanics. You say when you pick something up with the ATLS, it'll pick it up and bring it to you automatically.
Yes.
The max lift doesn't do that. You have to physically pull it up to take it off the grid, and then it hovers there, right? And so, if there was a toggleable option for both, where it could automatically go lift it off and bring it to you, as opposed to the tractor beam staying there, I think that's the point, right? Is you can toggle between both of those options. Is your girlfriend laughing at you?
No. But
Oh,
she
okay.
she was there for a moment.
Okay. But it would be nice to have to be able to pick and choose how the tractor beam works,
Sure.
because I mean, I for
Sure.
one feel like even though I'm not a huge cargo loader, if I was hopping back and forth between the two and the tractor beam was different every time, I might get a little frustrated. So being able to pick and choose how that tractor beam works and have it at least be, have the choice of it being consistent.
Yeah, like an auto pull or scroll.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Auto pull versus scroll. Yeah. Exactly.
Sure.
Simple.
I could see
Simple.
that.
So we talked about engineering. We talked ATLS. Um, Now let's talk a little bit about the tech preview channel. You said it's currently ongoing. I don't actually know if it is. Is it?
So
I
I
don't think the
just
meshing preview
updated
is
my
currently going.
launcher for it. There was an announcement at 5 o'clock for an up to 24 hours uh, preview. I'm assuming it's still going because it's only been like a couple hours now since it went up. So it should
Well, if it's
be,
up, that's
unless
cool.
there's a
But
breaking change that they found or a halting change, it should be going.
that's okay. I'm just going to touch a little bit on what is happening here, what server meshing is for maybe a couple of people who are watching who haven't played the game yet, like Stumpy here. Server meshing basically is the second part of the Jesus tech that
Well,
allows.
might I suggest talking about the limitations of the game first, so that we have some context as to why
Sure.
server meshing is so valuable and powerful for us.
Sure. So right now, when we hop in the game, we are limited to a specific, one server at a time. That server is limited to about 100 people at a time right now. We don't get to pick and choose which server we play on. We choose a region, and it randomly assigns us a server. And when we're there, we're there. We have a cool feature called persistent entity streaming, which basically means that any sort of entities that we interact with will remain where they are left for, in theory, indefinitely until the server automatically cleans it up, but it could stay forever. The downside right now is that those entities are tied to that specific server, and there are thousands of servers right now. And so
Yes.
if you are on one server and you set something up and then you leave and you go into a different server, it's as if it never happened, which really defeats the point of persistent entity streaming for the most part, and leaves a lot to be desired. And so what server meshing is going to do, and Rev, you'll probably chime in here because I'm no expert on this subject, but basically server meshing is going to allow these individual servers to communicate with a third. I'm going to say third party here. These servers stream into this what's called a replication layer, and then that replication layer can then restream to other servers. So these servers can interact across each other and interact with each other. So it feels like one big server,
Right.
which
Right.
is basically going to allow these persistent entities to be tracked across those servers, and so it's just really really cool.
Right. So some more limitations. So for example, let's say you have an org like ours, right? So we've got in our Discord like upwards of 500 people in our Discord. Active members could be very 30 to 50 active members at a time. And if we want our org to get together and go do a thing, being able to get into a server that's active, I mean, that's not going to happen. Chances are we would wind up spawning a new one. Well, great. So we spawn a new one, and then there's not really a lot of people that we can run into because of the player cap on the server, right? And one of the big benefits of the server meshing, I think you touched on it, is this idea that because the server can then focus on a smaller area, and then we can mesh them and build out the larger the larger shard or the largest entity of whatever universe we're in, then you can get more people overall in, and you're much more likely to run into other players. You can get more people into the same shard that you're in, and it'll be a much more fun experience, I think. I mean, even now, the only place you really run into people are in the cities. You run into people in the cities, a good bit, but even still, it's like running around in a city. I run into like 4 or 5 people. You know, I'm flying around in space. I mean, I'll see a few people flying around a station or something, but I'm really looking forward to uh, a time when I go into a city and 20, 30, 40 people walking around in that city. I go out into space and it's just swarms of ship coming in, waiting for their turn to come in and land, right? They're in a queue and they're like, okay, well, you know, to have actual traffic lanes, actual shipping lanes where it's ship after ship after ship, doing so that interdiction, means something. You can set up an interdiction web somewhere and with a reasonable expectation that, you're going to wait 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes tops before somebody comes through, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. Stygian, the link is down here. It's just discord.gg/pfcs. I thought you were in there, but that's okay. Easy
Hey,
peasy.
thanks,
That's the one.
Master. Appreciate that.
We should put a Discord command in chat so people can get it. Um, yes,
All
I'm
right.
very excited for that. To sort of get back to what's happening right now is they're doing a server meshing playtest on the tech preview channel, which means that this technology is actually working in house. They have it set up where they can have multiple servers communicating with the one replication layer and streaming to each other, and you can travel between these servers fairly seamlessly. And that test is live. They've had a few in the past couple of weeks. They've had a couple different iterations, and they're trying to raise player caps on these servers to try and stress them out and see what the current limitations are, see what's failing, so they can improve
Mm-hmm.
upon them.
Yeah.
They
So
had. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, right now, the terminology they're using, they're just saying they're going to start with one DGS with about 100 players. They're going to push it as far as they can. The last time they did this, they actually said that they're going to try to push it up to 1,000 players if they can. They
They
didn't, but
did.
they didn't say an actual number this time. Probably just being a little more conservative with their expectations. But yeah, the idea is to push it up, see how far they can get it, and get as many people as possible.
They did get up to 1,000 players per server. I think they had 4 servers going and 1,000 players per server or something. It was very, very unstable, incredibly unstable. It didn't last for very long. They had like 5 or 6 different tests with different DGS and player cap combinations. It seemed, according to what I've been told, it seemed to be most stable at about 300 people per server with 4 DGSs running on one mesh. So that's a hell of an improvement to where we are now, right? Because if that's 1,200 people in Stanton,
Right?
that's 12 times what we're at now, right? 300 people per server across 4 servers. That's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, you're
Crazy.
talking about seeing 3 or 4 people here. We're going to get up to that point where you're seeing 30, 40 people, even at that number,
Yeah,
right?
and so another thing about the meshing. So initially, the implementation, as I understand it, will be what they call a static server mesh, meaning that certain areas are going to be designated to live on a server, and that's not going to change, right? So like you'll have like the various planets, there'll be a server. Some of the space areas, there'll be a server or two. Maybe a popular moon might have its own server, but there's no adjustment there. Ultimately, the goal is to have a dynamic server mesh where, as population increases in an area, they'll be able to fracture that into multiple servers, and then spin up extra servers to deal with the increased player base in a particular area, so that like Crusader, for example, maybe even Area 18, instead of being a single server, maybe they'll split that into 2. Or maybe Crusader's one server, but then they figure, oh, Area 18's picking up. Oh, let's spawn off a server for just the city and another server for the rest of the planet. Um, and so once they get to that, then it'll really be interesting. They should be able to like really, really go crazy with that player cap. If
Yeah,
they if they
in
get really good
theory,
at it, potentially. I have to believe that in their fantasy world, they can eliminate the player cap and have a single shard. Because to me, that's the ultimate, right? Because if you could have a single shard with an infinite player cap, well, I say infinite, but with an unlimited player cap, then that means every time you're in, if another player's playing, you can find them somewhere wherever they're at, and that to me is like that's gold standard. That's
they have they've talked briefly about what their goal is, and it sort of looks like that. They talked about maybe having region shards, like how we have a region selection right now for the servers, and
right,
having like a US shard and an EU shard and an AU shard, and maybe an Asia shard, right?
right.
And then those are all like those are separate, but within there they have as many servers as they would need to handle that shard, right? And that's kind of what they talked about. Is that still their plan? I'm not sure. But in the last couple of years, when they first really started talking about server meshing, like right around 318 time, that's when they sort of brought up this idea of region-based shards. We'll see if that's what they stick with. But that at least at some point was a plan, and that would be kind of cool, right? A lot of stuff
Yeah,
happening.
a lot of stuff
A lot of
happening.
stuff happening. We are getting into an exciting time in Star Citizen. I feel like we've said that every week for the last however many episodes, but it seems every week there's more stuff to get excited about.
Well, the fact is, they keep producing, they keep actually implementing new and interesting technologies. They keep talking about the new things that are coming. And whereas in the past there was a lot of talk without any evidence of actual completions, we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. We're starting to see the completions, and it's really interesting to see it happen. And you're right, it is exciting. Heading into 4.0 theoretically by the end of the year.
Theoretically, theoretically,
They,
I
they
think
haven't
I
they
think there's
haven't
a
said
good
they haven't
chance.
pushed it into next year yet.
Nope, nope.
So
Their
I'm very
goal is their
much
goal is this year. They've made that much clear. Their goal is the end of this year. We'll
well.
see.
They've got time to at least get it to PTU by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah,
Especially
definitely.
with the tech previews. Uh, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. But with 3.24 out, with a point 0.1 patch, you know, on in play, it's done.
Honestly, if they could put out a 4.0 patch that has a tier 1 server mesh that has a shard selection capability, I think people would be okay with that. And I know that they're, hoping to avoid the idea of having to pick a shard and live on it, right? Aside from region-based shards. But even if you have these 1200 player shards, right? Or let's be generous and say 2000 player shards that you can select from. Being able to consistently go back to the same shard where all of your shit is a pretty big deal. And if they are increasing performance enough, which is it's one of the important parts of server meshing is performance increases. If they're getting to a point where it's stable, they have the mesh working, and you have the ability to kind of go in and visit the same server you've been doing every time consistently, I think people would be perfectly content with that until they come out with the next set of updates.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who's been in for a while remembers 3.18, right? And if they talk about 3.18 and the absolute clusterfuck that it was.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think when they do release the 4.0, I think Master Draconis here just mentioned that 4.0 will come out. It'll be a mess for a while, and that's probably true. Um, but if they can keep it from being a 3.18 type release, then I think that is a massive win, because just because we're talking about the number of new features, the amount of tech changes, the amount of new that's going to involve is staggering, to be quite honest. With
And if I may, right? I'm not a subject matter expert here. Okay, I don't know what it takes. All I know is what I've been told through the content that Star Citizen CIG puts out. From what they've said, persistent entity streaming was the hard part. That was the big leap that really took a lot of the effort and caused the most problems.
yeah, and all of that now lives on the replication layer, which is live. It's active.
It's perfectly live, and frankly, the servers are stable. It works really, really well. And yeah, it was on fire at first. They went through a couple months of this rough patch, but it works really, really well now. And that's the hard part, and it's done. And so now server meshing, while it's still difficult, it's not nearly as difficult to implement as persistent entity streaming was, and we're just about there. So yes, it's definitely going to be it's going to be rough. It's going to be
Servers are very
rough.
stable, bugs aside.
There's probably going to be a solid month where it's going to be like, ugh, I don't want to play Star Citizen. It's falling apart right now. But we get in, we let things happen, we let servers crash, we let these bugs take over, we power through the frustration. CIG gets the data they need, they fix it, and it's going to be fucking fantastic. After that, I'm really, really excited for it.
Absolutely.
So, I think that we're a little bit short here by 10 minutes or so, but I think that pretty much covers it. There's a couple more cool things we can talk about, but with no more Inside Star Citizens for the rest of the year, we need a little bit. We need to save some content here. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's it. If anybody has any more questions, you're welcome to hop into the Discord and ask them. We're always chatting about pretty much everything. One last thing before we go: Pirate Week is going on, and so feel free to get in game. CIG has put out this code that you need to crack, and there are clues scattered throughout the verse. So go to robertspaceindustries.com and see what they have in regards to Pirate Week. There's some new skins. So if you're the kind who wants to support the project through financial means, you can go to the pledge store, check out the pirate skins that are there. Baju, you just missed the stream, dude. We're just finishing up, but yeah, Pirate Week, go check it out. It's got some cool stuff.
Yep, it'll be available for VOD if you want to start from the beginning.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. It was so lovely to see some old faces coming back. We're gonna be live. Goodness, what's today? Thursday. Probably might go for Tuesday. I might try for Tuesday.
All right,
so
we can do Tuesday.
Trying to get this cycle ironed out. But yeah, like I said, hop into the Discord. We'll talk. Otherwise, we'll see you around. Thank you, guys.
Catch you in the verse later.
Raise your glass in the starlit night, amidst ships taking flight, to the crew at Crows whose touch turns to gold. With every craft that we mend, the journey's ready to begin, where the tales of the skies are bravely told. Neon lights at Cousin Crows, where every spacer knows you come with a ship, believe with the legend. As we tune up your ride beneath the great starry sky, Cousin Crows is where the universe bends. So here's to the stars in the endless blue, to the ships we've kissed with power anew. Cousin Crow's a beacon in the cosmic show, crafting voyages that are set to glow.